I do have a few talking points that I want to discuss with you down the road, though, of course, and that's why I ask you. But first of all, of course, thanks for coming on such short notice. Even like it was really fast, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Um, but before I ask you all the MMA questions and stuff, I saw your updates on like I've been in the media space forever, and it's so tough, and it doesn't show you much love, basically, right? And you have to keep grinding. I'm just wondering where this post came from, because I'm teaching media students, so I might just show it to them. So I'm curious where this comes from.
Um, like with anything that you do, it takes years and years of just, I guess, tedious. Well, in your mind, it seems tedious, right? But it's just you, I guess, sharpening your tools. As you develop in anything you do, right? In any in the media, in sports, whatever, right? You have to put in that grind and continue. And sometimes you feel like you have accomplished something, right? But really you haven't accomplished anything, and that's where the post comes from, is thinking about like what I've gone throughout the years of like just creating what I've tried to create on my own. And it seems like I've done something, but really at the end of the day, I'm just starting out. Even though it's been like 7 years or 8 years or whatever of me just trying to mold myself, but really there's so much more molding to do in the future that that's where the post comes from. Like it's not really like me like angry at somebody or nothing like that. It's just me thinking out loud in a way.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because like I said, I work with lots of like young students, like they're 20, 25 or so. And when they graduate, they're like, yeah, I made it. Like, I mean, yeah, you can celebrate for a moment, but like, I mean, no. So it's good to see someone who's been in the space for like quite a while. I try to see like you started like 2014-ish, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I look at like your recordings and publishings. Yeah, so I mean, you've been in the space for a while, and you're still like, I have to grind more. So that's cool to hear. But it seems like you enjoy the grind, though, right?
Oh, of course. If I didn't enjoy most of what I did, I probably wouldn't do it. And I'm fortunate enough to take something that was, I guess, a passion, or in a way, kind of like a hobby, or just being a fan of something, and creating a way to be involved in that industry through media. And that's basically what I did is, I didn't go to school for journalism or broadcasting or any of that. I pretty much learned everything as I, covered the sport. You know what I mean? It's just, I guess it's just a slow process. I wish I went to school for it, then I'd be light years ahead of what I'm at right now, I guess.
Okay, so you didn't go the Ariel Helwani route. You're just like learning by doing. But you, like I said, I saw like you started way back when MMA wasn't like that huge. I mean, right now, and we're gonna talk about this later, because even here in Asia, like ONE, of course, is blowing up and stuff. But back in 2014, like MMA was like, are you crazy? They're punching and kicking each other in the face. Like, why would you do this? So how did it start?
Are you talking about how did it start? Like watching the sport or covering the sport?
But both. Like, how did you get interested, and how did you go like, hey, no one else is talking about it, I should talk about it?
Well, watching the sport, I remember watching MMA like when it first started, when the UFC first came out, like in the early 90s. I remember watching those, but I wasn't like really like captivated by it. I just thought like, oh yeah, people are fighting. People fight in the street all the time, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like something that's similar, just inside the cage, inside of an arena. But then years passed, and then I came back to Asia, back to Korea, and I started watching Pride, when Pride was still going on in the early 2000s. And then I became kind of like a fan, I guess, at that time. And I just watched the sport. And then in 2014, I just decided one day, like, is anybody really covering this sport? It's like, it's really niche. And at that time in Asia, it was super niche, even though Pride had already, happened and stuff like that. But, and ONE Championship was coming up, and there was a bunch of other promotions that were putting on shows in Asia doing really well, but it wasn't like huge or anything like that. So I just decided to search on the internet, and there was one website that was covering MMA in Asia, which was AsiaMMA.com. I don't think it's around anymore, but I just sent them an email, and they said, "You want to cover the sport? Cover it." And I was just like, "All right, let's do it. Let's go to shows." And that's how I started, going to local shows and doing, like play by play and kind of like live blogging stuff and
Mhm.
recording statistics, like the really stuff that some people love to do, but for myself it was just part of the learning process. And that's how I started in
Okay.
2014 with AsiaMMA.com. And yeah, and pretty much there's people along the way that have helped me and taught me many things, and a lot of it was kind of like on my own in a way of just like
Mhm.
researching and watching like lectures and kind of like my own education. I went through like my own college for the first 4 years of just kind of piecing
Right.
everything together, and then after that, just I don't know, just finding new ways and new avenues to kind of create content myself.
All right. Hey, down the road, we gotta create an MMA journalism course
Yeah.
somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, but cool. But I mean, since you said you started like more or less on your own, and like it was very niche back then. I remember when I started watching MMA, and or when I saw it the first time on the internet, probably not on TV but on the internet. I remember I was intrigued, but because like the way I was brought up, or I think the way I studied at uni, it's like all like liberal students, like very like, how can you watch that? Like back then, it's so brutal. You shouldn't be watching that. And I was questioning myself, like, are they right? Is it too brutal? Shouldn't I be watching? Shouldn't I not be enjoying it? But then, I mean, eventually, like, I mean, I wouldn't stop, of course, but I was like questioning myself for a while. And so I wonder, like, maybe not in this regard, but somewhere down the line, did you think at some point, maybe MMA isn't the right thing, or you're like, no, MMA is super cool and it's so intriguing, and maybe you're doing martial arts yourself. You're like, no, I stick with this because that's my life now.
Well, even if I didn't do any martial arts, I would still like MMA. I was never like a person that was thinking that this is too brutal or anything like that. I felt
Mm.
like this is fighting.
Yeah.
This is a sport, like this. If I know a lot of people don't consider it a sport, but it is a sport. It's one on one, combat. That's a sport. You might be hurting each other, but that's the point of the sport, is to hurt each other. And I understand that. I mean, if someone goes in there and gets hurt, they get hurt. I'm not really like, I'm not a type of person that gets grotesque or like disgusted by like horror or stuff like that. So it's like, it doesn't bother me when like people
Mhm.
like break their bones or like stuff like that. It's just, I just look at it as like, that's the reality of it. Like
Yeah.
it is it is the a lot of people want to just kind of focus on like the spoils of victory, but really you got to look at the other aspect of it, is
Mhm.
like they go in there and they're like about to kill each other. And I think that's
Yeah.
what attracts me to it too, is because there's no one to help you. It's you versus another person. And it's
Uh-huh.
like intriguing, like what will allow this person to win, because not always the favorite wins, right? That's another
Mhm.
thing. It's like any day, anytime, something could happen inside that cage, and that's what
Mhm.
makes it exciting and interesting and intriguing to me. Yeah, so no, I don't know if anybody really ever came up to me and said like, why do you watch that?
Mhm.
I just don't bring it up to people.
Okay.
I don't really like bring up like, oh, did you see the fights on? No, I don't. If I know the date, if I don't have any idea of like what their interests are, I never bring up fighting unless they know like what I do, and then they bring it up. So it's
Mhm.
like, but I never really go deep into fighting talk with people, because I do it all the time with, like, here, like we're doing it, right? So I do
Right,
it all
right,
the
right.
time as a job. So like when I'm outside the job, if someone wants to talk about it, we could talk about it. But most of the time, I've never had anybody come up to me and say something like that. But I'm glad. I'm glad no one's ever said nothing like that to me, because I understand that aspect of it too. I understand
Mhm.
that some people think it's brutal, because my brother was a fighter,
Okay.
and so like I got to see it through the lens of my mother. Watching her son fight. She couldn't watch
Yeah.
her son fight, and she's just devastated. Like, she didn't want her son to do that stuff. But, for me, it's like I support it. Like if you
Mhm.
want to fight, fight. You know what I mean? Do your thing. Do what you want to do. And
Mhm.
I look at it that way. It's like people are doing what they want to do, so let them do it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's like, I mean, it's the way you want to express yourself, or what you want to, I know, better yourself or whatever. Actually, a fair point, but like, it's one-on-one, right? Because I used to do lots of team sports, and then it's like, if you slip once or do you make a mistake, you can always like make up for it, like in a minute later. But in fighting, you can't, right? If you
Yeah.
slip, if you're not focused, then it's over. So that's actually like, yeah, it's like really really cool. It's one-on-one, and you have to be in the moment. So it's yeah, it's something pretty special. Just as an like as an example, like the last time I posted something about fighting on like my Facebook, for example, was like back then Aldo versus McGregor, and I'm just like, hey guys, who you got? And then like my university colleagues, my students, oh no, professor, you are watching fighting. That's so brutal. Why would you do that? And I'm like, okay, I'm not posting about this on public, like in public anymore. I write about it sometimes, but it's on a website, not in public anymore, because I didn't want to have this anymore. But no, back to you. So you said your brother's a fighter. You're also doing martial arts then? Or you grew up with
Yeah,
martial arts?
I've done martial arts throughout my life, but like it's like when I was young, I did like taekwondo and I did play sports growing up, and then I got into jiu-jitsu for a few years, and then right when the pandemic was about to start, I was gonna start doing like start getting into the kickboxing a little bit more, like Muay Thai and stuff like that, but that the pandemic just like threw a wrench into all of that. But yeah, I did some boxing too growing up.
Okay.
But jiu-jitsu is probably the most fun because
Okay.
you don't like if you go box, after you box you're like your head's hurt, like if you go into sparring, but in jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
you get hurt. I'm not saying you won't get hurt because I've had many injuries from jiu-jitsu, but it's not like head trauma injuries. It's like just your body like aches and pains and like maybe a dislocated finger here or there or something like that. But
All right.
but with jiu-jitsu, I enjoyed that the most. I wish I could still do it, but it's just gyms around here. It's not like allowing it to happen. So just gotta wait.
Yeah. I mean, gyms here in Bangkok also, everything is closed unless it's like for pro fighters. They find a way, or semi-pro fighters, but like underground gyms. I see people posting about their boxing training, and I'm like, where are you training right now? I want to do this too. But the fun thing about what you just said is like that you like jiu-jitsu the most, because that's the one thing that I want to. So I've been doing Muay Thai for forever, but I want to do jiu-jitsu. But every time I think about it, my ligaments already hurt just thinking about it. Like, I'm so scared of like dislocating. I had a dislocated knee like 2 years ago. I'm like, no, I don't want to dislocate it again. I'm so scared of this, not being flexible enough. So that kept me from jiu-jitsu. Do you have any encouraging words for someone who wants to try it?
Well, I guess you just got to pick the right gym and then know who your partners are. Because, I went to a gym when I first started jiu-jitsu, and it was like gladiator school. They didn't care if you're a white belt or a black belt. Like, they're going after you, some of these people. And I felt like that was dangerous, but at the same time, like, it taught me so much because I was in danger all the time with these guys. And these guys were like ex Muay Thai champions or kickboxing champions. They're like gym owners now, but they teach jiu-jitsu too. So they're like, they're athletes turned into like gym owners, but they still have that like athlete strength and they know all the techniques and everything. So it's very hard to spar them. But it was fun, but at the same time, it's not like a good environment. So you got to find a good environment, because I've seen so many people come into the gym while I'm there and not return after the first or second day because of those guys. There's always that like crew, I think, in a lot of gyms, and it's important to kind of stay away from that crew of like the hardcore like dudes will spar you and they'll like go after your ligaments and all that stuff. But I've been to other gyms where the people are really nice and they know how to spar and they're very careful. And if you find that environment, I think you have no problem. You have no worries.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, gym environment matters anyways. Like, I mean, but I'm not sure if it's in jiu-jitsu the same, but guessing from what you say is similar. Like, if you go into a Muay Thai gym and go into a new gym, then they check you out. They're like, hey, what can you do? Then they watch you on the pads, and they're like, okay, you spar, and then they give you like a guy who just kicks your ass, of course. Is that in jiu-jitsu too? So like, hey, show the new guy how it's done. Or
No,
is
I
it
don't
like
think so. I don't. I hope whoever's running a gym doesn't do that because your customer base won't be very
no,
high, right? Like if you're getting your ass kicked, like the first day
true,
you're
true.
there and you're like, what is going? You don't know anything, right? There's a lot of people that don't know anything about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
They
fair,
just
yeah.
saw it and they're like, oh, I want to work out and this looks fun. If
Mm.
you want them to come back, you don't want
You
to
gotta
put
be
them
nice.
against somebody. Yeah, but I guess in Bangkok it's different, right? Because Bangkok is the land of Muay Thai. So it's like once you go into a gym, I think it's like almost like a custom to test you.
So I mean,
Maybe.
if you're a beginner, they're super nice to you, and
Hmm.
they joke with you. But if they see you can do something, they're like, "Hey, okay,
Hmm.
I think you can do sparring, right?" You're like, "Yeah,
Hmm.
I sparred before. Okay, go in the ring. I send someone, and then this someone usually kicks your ass." So it's like,
Yeah. That's,
and they're all around laughing
yeah.
and joking. It's like it's not like kicking your ass to a point where you're like on the floor, but like
Hmm.
kicking your ass, and then everyone's
Hmm.
around, the teachers watching, laughing, like, "Hey, come on, do something."
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, but I guess that's the spirit here in Thailand. Like, but when it comes to Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu probably
Maybe
different.
maybe it's the ego of the gym. Maybe they just want to show you like, hey, we know something too. So if you come here, we can teach you. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to prove. Different countries, different customs of how they
yeah,
do things. So we could look at it in a negative perspective, or I think it's like a positive perspective of like because if you go to Thai gyms, there's a lot of laughing and joking around going.
all the time. Yeah,
Yeah, all the time. So it's like you got to kind of you got to understand and learn like, okay, what is their humor? What kind of
yeah,
humor do they have? And that could be their humor, which is
yeah.
fun for some people, and some people it's just like humiliating, right?
Right. No, so but yeah, you're right, and they're usually not going like super hard. It's just like super fast, so they
Mm-hmm.
exhaust you with pace. So they're not trying to take your head off. They're just trying to get you really exhausted. And if you walk around, they kick you all the time, left, right, and you're like, "Where's this coming from?" And they're
Yeah.
laughing while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And your coach is like, "Your number one tip is be sabai, like be relaxed." He's like, "Relax, have fun, have fun." That's the number one tip in a Thai gym is have fun. So yeah, you're right. And that took me a while, to be honest, to understand, coming from Germany, like where everything is super serious, and then coming to Asia. I'm wondering, like how the difference within Asia, if it's like, because you say like you talk about Thailand, not knowing Thai gyms. So I would assume in Korea it's a little bit different, like the atmosphere, the culture. I assume is it like
Yeah,
more serious? Yeah.
a little bit different. I don't think like you're gonna go into. I guess it all depends on the gym owner because I've seen
Mhm.
gyms where they're like, "Hey, spar each other. It doesn't matter," and then they're brawling. They're like, so it doesn't. Like I think that's another thing of gym culture too. Is like you gotta stop people from trying to kill each other. And you could go to the
Mhm.
nicest gyms in the world, but there's always going to be people that are trying to kill each other in sparring. But in Korea, I don't know. Not it's Thai is different because I've been to Thailand a bunch of times, and I've
Mhm.
been around Thai gyms and stuff. It's the environment is a little bit different, a little bit more loose,
Mhm.
and in Korea, it's like there's that um, hierarchy in society type thing.
Okay.
Like so they have that Confucianism. Yeah,
Okay.
Confucianism. They still follow that kind of
Yeah.
creed or whatever. So it is kind of weird, but Thailand. I rather have the Thailand vibe. It's a
Okay.
little bit more fun and open, and not as like restricted. That
Mhm.
because when you're in Thailand, martial arts is part of the culture, but it's not like how like Japan or China or Korea has martial arts. It's different. It's a little
Mhm.
the different style. It's hard to explain because um, I don't know. It's hard to explain because it just seems like Thailand is just a little bit more open,
Mhm.
to other cultures or other styles of just personalities and stuff like that. But in
Mhm.
like I think in Korea especially, it's like they're 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 closed off and restricted to this format. And I think
Mhm.
it's slowly opening up now, but I'm just saying like they're just still so traditional.
Mhm.
Remember when China had that guy? China still has that guy. The guy that was going around beating up all the traditional martial artists.
Yeah.
Like that's the guy that's like changing everything, right? In
Mhm.
China. And they hate him, right? In
Yeah.
China because he's breaking all the the traditions of martial arts and showing like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this doesn't work. You know what I mean? This is not a real fighting technique. This is something that you just made up and you're using it, but it doesn't help anybody. So like that guy's helping in China, and then like in other parts of Asia, I think there's an effect, like a domino effect of like, okay, we got to open up a little bit more of like what's real and what's realistic and what's used, you know, what's feasible in the real world compared to like what's just like tradition. And I think they're doing it little by little.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, so that leads me to lots of follow-up questions, but I wanted to ask one last question on like, because we started like where you started, when you started. Just want to ask like one last question on like your path, and then more about the martial arts itself and some of the current fighters and so on. Because I obviously, and I'm sad to admit it, because I wanted to be like an insider, an MMA insider, but I found you via SCMP. So that's when I was made aware of you. So I would assume this increased your profile by a lot now, SCMP, because it's like rather mainstream, I guess. So A, how did this happen? And B, like, what's the change right now? Do you see that like there's now more people interacting with you and more people knowing you, for example?
Oh, definitely. I think it's a huge benefit, and there is a huge impact for working for like a major publication or a news outlet that doesn't just cover MMA or fighting, which brings in different audiences, and it, you know, it's just different. It's different in the eyes of people, in the eyes of the promotion organizations, and it has benefited me a lot. You know what I mean? Like especially with the editor that they have over there. You know, whenever I write something, they are very good at kind of combing through and fixing things and showing me like some habits that you should have to improve yourself in the writing aspects. And yeah, man, and it only has benefited me by working at SCMP. And they give me freedom to pretty much interview whoever I want, you know, as long as they want that, you know, that fighter in the publication. Yeah, so it has changed a lot. You know what I mean? Like the impact of being on SCMP it has been great. With and Nick is the guy that kind of runs the show over there. He's only been helpful to me. Like he's only been, you know, there to kind of like say, okay, this for like, especially for like the journalistic side of it, he knows, you know, has so much experience, and he kind of, you know, guides me. As you know, like I said before, I didn't go to school for journalism, so there's a lot of things I'm still learning myself. But I don't know. I don't really consider myself like a journalist or anything like that, though. That's the funny thing. It's like you know, like I've said, you know, like I don't know, like there's journalists and there's like, I don't know if there's a difference between a reporter and a journalist. I think there is. Then there's broadcasters, right? And there's like, so like there's so many different, you know, aspects of the media. But yeah, but for working with SCMP, it's always been great, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have that opportunity. And the only way that I think I got that opportunity was, I think meeting Nick at a UFC. We're like both covering the UFC, and then I met him there, and we just, you know, talked and then eventually got some work in together, and then it just continued after that. So this is before the pandemic. So luckily it was before the pandemic. Right. And I started working with them pretty heavy, and I've been doing it, you know, for like the last, pretty much the whole pandemic era. Yeah. So about a year and a half or something like that. And it's been fun, man. Those guys are always open and helpful and great to me.
Awesome. Yeah, the SCMP, like for me, kind of came out of nowhere with the MMA content, and then it came really hard, like everywhere and like all the time. I'm like, hey, that's cool. It's kind of like the BT sports of Asia for me right now. Like all of a sudden they're there and lots of content all the time. And like, why wasn't this there before? Yeah, that makes sense. I want more. So that's really cool. And when you guys go live and you have those live discussions, I like that you don't agree with each other. Like you always have different opinions, which is really nice because you're like 2 or 3 people on there. Why would you only be saying like, yeah, I agree? But that happens also on so many broadcasts where you agree, but you guys always, and you're always very calm. You're like, I think, and you just have a completely different point to your colleagues, which is nice. So you can just see it from different viewpoints. I would assume there's no I don't know, friction. So when you say like, hey, I don't agree with you right now, so it's all okay, I guess, right? They're all cool with it.
Well, that's what's the purpose of having that live chat or whatever, is to say what you feel. And if you disagree, then you disagree. There's no hard feelings. There are never any hard feelings. I hope there's not, right? But, sometimes there are some inaccuracies, right? And we'll deal with that, right? Behind the scenes or whatever. But, we've had arguments on there. Like, there's been guys that, there's like, okay, who's usually on the podcast? Like me, then there's Nick and Chris, and then Leon and Drake, and then Tom from time to time. And we don't always agree. Like, I'm always disagreeing with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just do it just to mess with them. I'm not even believing I'll debate them just to debate them.
Okay.
I don't even believe what I'm saying. I'm just making it up as I go, just to just to make it interesting, just to make it fun. And then sometimes I'm like really passionate about my argument against them, but half the time they don't even know if I'm like kidding or not. So that makes it fun too. And then there's Nick. He's kind of like the operator of everything, and he just sits back and laughs at us, which is always good to have someone laughing at what we're doing. So so it's a good combination, and it's good to see, like, if I say something, I will actually want somebody to disagree with me, especially if there's like 3 or 4 people there, because 4 people agreeing with each other, like you said, it's just like, what's the point of even having a podcast? Like,
exactly.
There's no reason to record anything. It's not even fun to listen to somebody say something and then the next person parrot whatever they said, and then the third person repeat what the other people said. It's like, that's not fun. So it is an interesting dynamic with the live chats, and I think we're going to continue doing them no matter what. And the fight companions too.
Well, yeah, that's a cool thing. I mean, right now, those live chats, I see like they're always the same people commenting. Like when I'm on, I'm like saying, hey, I know those names already. But I'm not sure which one, but one of the last ones, and you guys argued about the women's division, I believe. And your co-host, they both picked, I think, I forgot who, they picked like the same. And you're like, I picked someone completely different. I can see in their eyes like, why are you saying this right now? How can you pick her and not agreeing with her? That was really funny. That was cool. And all the chat disagreed with you too, by the way. They were like, why would you? I think you picked Ritu, I think, to win the tournament. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I still think Ham is going to win the tournament.
Okay.
But I think Ritu is like, if Ham doesn't win, I think Ritu wins. No. Everybody thinks like Hirata is going to win it. And, they know everybody's counting out Stamp. So...
Yeah, I want. I mean, I'm in Thailand, so of course I'm Team Stamp. Even though I don't like her dancing, it's a bit annoying. And from a social media perspective, of course, I would go for the young, hip, and up and coming Japanese fighter. But I'm scared of not scared, but I think Ritu is just like they underestimate her, because I mean she finds a way so far.
She's the scary one, because
I think so.
It seems like she's getting better, and everybody's kind of the same fighter that they were before. Yeah, and Ritu's just better and better and better than, like, every fight she's getting better. Stamp looks like she's getting better too, but she still has like those tendencies to like not strike in volume, and that's how she could win the fight, right? But she still has those Muay Thai habits that she needs to throw away in MMA, and you can see that in MMA. And her just winning with those bad habits shows you how good she is just naturally. But she's a girl; she's so young that as she goes through the years, she's gonna be one of those top flight atomweights. She'll probably end up winning the belt eventually in a few years. But right now, she's still kind of like Ritu is so far more advanced, I think, in her development compared to Stamp. But them fighting each other, I would like to see it in the next round. Why not? That would be fun to watch. But Ritu, man, it's just like Meng Bo is so good, and Ritu just weathered the storm and then came back the last 2 rounds. That just is so impressive to watch. And Mengbo had no answers for the wrestling. It was like, man, if her wrestling gets that good in that cage, it's going to be hard for anybody to stop her, especially if she gets to get him to the ground, like in that crucifix position. So yeah, Ritu, man, I'm kind of convinced. I think her fighting while the Grand Prix was like on pause helped her more than anybody, even though she lost the fight, because she was back in the tournament right after she won a fight. So yeah, Ritu. But yeah, Ham, what do you think about that fight, Ham and Denise? A lot of people are like fighting over that.
Yeah, I mean, so by heart, I'm a stand-up fighter, so I would always prefer the stand-up fighter to win, just because. But I mean, I had Denise too. I think I just thought, like, especially in one, like where it's like judged as a whole. So I just thought she put on more pressure, and their Ham was landing like once in a while, but maybe also my expectations were too high because I didn't know her before. I just saw the hype packages and like the highlights, and I'm like, oh my God, she must be so good. And then, I mean, she's strong, but Denise put the pressure on her. So I thought Denise should have had that. But I mean, I saw Chatri on SCMP explaining why the review didn't do anything. I mean, fair enough, you can't just review everything and change it. But yeah, the one thing about Denise is she's always so vocal, so it's hard to really like her. I mean, I like her as a fighter, but she's always like complaining, like, and Angela should have vacated, and I'm like, just let your fighting speak for you, and we're gonna be your biggest fans.
Well, Denise, what she proved in that fight, if she would have won that fight, I wouldn't have had any problems with that either. You know what I mean? That was a close fight. You know what I mean? Yeah. And with Denise, I like that she's more vocal because there's not many vocal women in one championship. It's like, Angela's becoming more vocal because of Denise, which is actually making it better and it's more interesting, right?
True, yeah.
And Denise, she's a type of a woman, I think, that she cannot just hold in what she feels as much as easily. And that's what comes out, pouring out, right? And especially like, we don't know what she went through ahead of this fight, and that could have came out too at the end. And that's why she felt like she won the fight. And if she won the fight, I would have had no argument over that. Yeah. You know what I mean? But Denise, what she proved here is that she's as good as one of the best atomweights in the world. Like, like top 2 atomweights, she fought her to the end, right? So we know that Denise is going to be a champion too. Real soon. Like she's getting better at what she does. And Ham, she's at the tail end of her career, so we know what to expect from her, and that's what we expected. What she just did, I mean, she could put on better performances because she has, but that's probably what we're going to see for the rest of her career. I mean, that or a little bit better than what she did against Denise, and that's not a good sign for Ham because Denise is going to get better. So when Denise comes back after a couple of wins, if they fought again, I would take Denise. Like I would pick Denise to win that fight, and I picked Denise to win a lot of the fights if she fought anybody, just not Ham at at the last fight because I picked Ham to win. But yeah, I like Denise. I like the atomweight division. You know what I mean? Like the atomweight division is fun to watch. This Grand Prix makes it a little bit more fun to watch too. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what the matchups are. What do you think the matchups will be?
I mean, it's decided by the fans, right? So, I mean, I would that's what they said. So I would assume, I don't know. I mean, I hope it's going to be stand-up fighters meeting each other like Stamp and Ham, and then the grapplers go at each other. Because I think, like what you said earlier, if maybe if Stamp right now would face one of the grapplers, I think that's too soon for her. And so I think maybe a stand-up is more intriguing right now. On the other hand, I want to see what she can do. And I mean, like you said, Stamp, for example, was kind of impressive with her lack of experience. And she uses lots of power, right, to power out of moves. When they hold on to her, she just finds a way to power out and just moves out somehow. So I know I want to see her tested more, of course, but I wouldn't mind if that's in the final. Because, talent.
I see your side. I see that having Stamp versus Ham would be a more exciting matchup, and we would get a better fight out of that. And plus, you would want Stamp or Ham in the final. You would want that. And also, on the other side, like you said, a grappler versus a grappler. Let's see how good Hirata's grappling is against Ritu. I like that. I think that's the matchups they should make. They should make the striker versus striker and the grappler versus grappler. I think that would make the best result for a finals. But who knows? You know, I mean, who knows if this fan voting is real? If it's not real, you know, if you'll never know at the end of the day. It's fun. Did you vote?
I did not vote for a few reasons, and I wanna issue a warning to you. If you criticize it too much, you get blocked by Chatri, because I got blocked on Twitter by Chatri.
Oh man, I don't know. I've criticized things on the podcast a lot.
Oh really?
I've never been
maybe they've grown up. I've been blocked for 5 years or so. Back then, I was just asking. He's like, ask me anything, and I asked I wonder about your business model. I don't get it. Can you explain it? And then it just blocked me.
Oh well, that topic's coming back, you know, recently. If you've seen the news cycle, they're digging into the business side. And to be honest with you, like me, I don't know anything about the business side. You know, I know a little bit here and there, but nothing too deep and detailed. And at the same time, I don't care about the business side.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just, I don't care. I want the fight side. I don't care about the business side. As long as the fighters are getting paid good money to fight, at the end of the day, really, I don't care where the money's coming from. No, I do care, but I'm just saying, as long as they get paid, right? If they get paid, and from what I know from a lot of the fighters, I know that there's people at the bottom of the totem pole that are not getting paid that much, but then the fighters that are a little bit higher up, that've been with the promotion for a while, they are getting compensated really well.
Yeah, sure.
More than they would if they went and fought for the UFC, if they went and fought for another Bellator or whatever, they would get paid more, and they're probably a bigger star with one championship compared to those other promotions, right? So that's the way I look at it. But it is interesting how these people that study the business side of it kind of put everything out there, and it's almost like you have to dissect it, because you know, they're not going to tell you outright what's really going on. They just say, this person left, this person came in, and this money moved over here to this bank account, and they're opening in a bank account over here, and you're like, come on, is this the inside job, or what's going on? You know.
Yeah, maybe also some disgruntled former employees are like, hey, you kicked me out, I'm gonna tell the world, or I don't know. But also probably it speaks for one becoming bigger, because now, I mean, also the US media looks into it and posts about it quite frequently. So that's good for one, right? They're like, hey, okay, now the US is getting to know us better, so whatever. Well,
you know, like you said, as you get bigger, there's more eyes on you, and then more people trying to break everything down of exactly what you're doing, because you're creating interest, and that's good and bad. We don't know what's going to happen with one. Is it good or is it bad? We have no idea right now. But you know, because there's a lot of people there. If you go online, you know, there's so many opinions and rumors and conspiracy theories about. I'm not talking about moon landing and stuff. I'm talking about just conspiracy theories about MMA and it's funny to really read some of those, because it's where did you think of this? Where does this come from? Are you really, really high, and then that's what you came up with, or are you reading into things? I don't know, but it makes it fun at the end of the day too, right? Just some of the stuff that comes out, but more attention to one championship, more scrutiny, more eyes, more everything, right? And you know, and then now they're trying to make a blast. Well, what I heard was there's a rumor going around that their show that they're doing in December, it will be in the States. So
really?
Maybe that's what they're doing.
That's why they have. Okay, let's talk about it right away. That's why they have the mega fight, Rod Tang versus DJ.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this kind of fight? So it's for those who don't know, it's Muay Thai versus MMA, and they switch by the round.
Yeah. So they're alternating rounds. So I guess there's 4 rounds. The first round will be Muay Thai, and the second round will be MMA. Third round Muay Thai. I like that they're doing this this fight, because I feel you know, Rod Tang benefits from this tremendously. You know, because he's fighting DJ, and then DJ, he could benefit tremendously by beating one of the best strikers in the world, right? At his weight. But then the alternating rounds is kind of weird to me, like I think it's just better just to do one sport rather than alternate back and forth. But at least what one has is like they don't have to change gloves. Like they could do the Muay Thai with the same gloves as the MMA. But I think if it all depends, is it 5 minutes or 3 minutes? I think it's 3 minutes. If DJ survives, I think this is what a lot of people think. If DJ survives the first round with Rodtang, and I think he will, in the second round DJ will finish him because what kind of ground skills does this guy have?
Just wait and see.
We just have to wait and see. But then you're facing DJ, who's one of the greatest of all time, and then he's had like more than 15 years of experience on the ground to a guy that's pretty much a Muay Thai specialist. He is a Muay Thai specialist. So I think that the outcome everybody has in their mind, but we never know. Like you said, we never know until they step into the cage. But I'll watch it. But just the round by round thing confuses me. I don't know why they're doing that.
Same, and I mean I find it's kind of cool, kind of also like here in Bangkok we have like a local show like they call it Fight Circus by now, where they have those weird fights going on, like a giant versus a really small person, or like 5-on-1 or whatnot. It feels a little bit like that, like just like the switching of styles in between. Even though, of course, I mean, both are like in their prime and like elite athletes. But it's just, I mean, like you said, I assume Rodtang is. I think knowing Rodtang, he's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna knock him out anyway, so he's gonna have fun in the first round, just like walking around, flashy style, some spinning back kicks and stuff, just joking, and then DJ is just gonna choke him out in the second. So that's probably what most of us think.
DJ's like he's so fast, and his wrestling is so good to where like even the highest level wrestlers have a hard time defending. If he wraps Rodtang's legs up, Rodtang's going for a ride. He's going to get dumped on his head, and then he's going to get his neck wrapped up. That's what's going to happen. So that's why we're going to watch it. That's why we're intrigued to see if like Rodtang will survive or if DJ will survive. But we've seen something like that in the past where when Horiguchi fought Tenshin, but that was in kickboxing. So like Horiguchi went over to kickboxing and fought Tenshin, who's one of the best kickboxers in the world, and lost. But it was in his sport, in kickboxing. Exactly. Right? This one is like, who can capitalize while their sport is going on in their round, right? Exactly. Or is the other person going to capitalize? Will DJ go in there and knock out Rodtang in the first round, right? Stuff like that. So I think it's just a way for one championship to draw that American crowd to say like, okay, you guys have the UFC and Bellator, but we have something completely different that you can watch too. And it's going to be interesting all the time. So come on over.
True. Yeah, sure. I remember an interview with DJ. He was saying like he would never do a Muay Thai fight. He likes it. He appreciates it. He likes watching it. But he would never do a full-on Muay Thai fight because he's scared of getting punched in the face. So I guess we can take from this like his strategy, like avoiding contact in the first and then hoping his game works out in the second.
I hope so.
What do you think about the other fights that are announced for that card? I think it was Bibiano Fernandez also fighting, I think, wasn't it, against John Lineker?
Yes. That's a good fight too. I think that's a deserving fight for John Lineker. He came in to one championship and pretty much ran the table and just destroyed everybody. His last fight, I believe that was against Kevin Bellator, and he crushed Kevin. Like Kevin he's never looked like that before, and John just melted through him. Lineker's, that's the fight to make. I thought they weren't going to make that fight, but I guess they came to terms because I know Bibiano was in contract disputes with one championship about pay. And that's very interesting too, because most people don't speak up about that stuff in one championship. But Bibiano came out and did this long interview for our SCMP and kind of revealed everything, about his situation. And even Chacha came back and said, like, you got to draw numbers to get the pay that you want, right? So I guess numbers do matter. You know what I mean? It's not just about being a martial artist. You have to draw some attention. This is an organization,
Right.
it's a promotion. So I guess they figured that out. They got the contract signed, and you got Lineker versus Bibiano. Bibiano, only thing that worries me about him in this fight is two things. Number one, his age. He's not young. And number two, his absence from competition. It's been over 2 years. And you're coming in against like a guy that's like an assassin, you know what I mean? Like just like throwing bombs, and if one of those bombs land, it's just over for you. And I don't, Bibiano has a chin, but I don't know if he has the chin to kind of outlast John Lineker's punches. It's going to be interesting. Am I pick who? I don't know who I'm picking, man. It's just too close. It's just not too close, but it's just too soon. I think I need to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, same. I've been a Bibiano fan for a while. I mean, way back when I started watching. So, I mean, I always have like the soft spot in my heart for him, because it's just like cool to see him succeed. But yeah, like you said, if Lineker connects, then, I mean, good night for everybody, right? So that's tough. But yeah, we still got some time to go until this one. Tan is also back, right? Isn't Tan fighting Tonnen, I believe?
Yeah. Well, they've been trying to put this fight together for a while, and Tan, he broke one of his fingers during the Martin fight, and he was having trouble getting that finger fixed. And it took him I remember I interviewed him like a couple months ago, and this was during his recovery from his injury, and he thought that he would fight Gary. In his mind, he was fighting Gary, and they did a bunch of PR for that fight too. But both those guys have been injured. Like one guy was injured, and another guy was injured. But I guess now everybody's fine, and they're ready to come back in December. So that's a very interesting fight, because that's a complete clash of styles. We got a devastating striker that will just put you to sleep, and then we got Gary Tonin, a submission guy that will rip your leg off, or your arm, or your neck. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
he's got flying knees too, though.
Yeah, he has flying knees, but I don't know. I think he'll eat a knee while he's throwing his flying knee. He comes in against a Tan Lee. But yeah, that one's interesting, because we already have the next title challenger going to be lined up after that. So whoever wins that will fight the winner of Martin Nguyen versus Jaewoong Kim, right? So yeah, it's good. The featherweight division is starting to finally move along since that last fight. So it's good to see that. I don't know. It's hard to pick. Gary Tonin, man. Can he take the punishment?
Yeah. It's going to be the first fight where he has to walk through the fire, I guess, right? Like before his fights, he dominated most of his fights and then just basically did what he does. But this one, he has to really walk through it to get hold of him, right? So that's going to be interesting.
Definitely. It's a very dangerous fight. Tan Lee's dangerous fight for anybody, right? Yeah. And he's shown you he's only knocked out everybody. And since he's joined the pro, everybody. He's knocked out everybody. He's knocked out the champion. He's knocked out everybody ahead of before that. The dude is just phenomenal. And will he be able to knock out Gary Tonin? We'll see.
Yeah, hey, I was all on the Martin train until they fought. I'm like, no, Martin's got this. Martin is so awesome. And I mean, he's really good. But like the way how Tan was surviving in the beginning, but then came back to finish him, that was impressive. So yeah, that's going to be a crazy fight.
Yeah, and Martin also, like he's a guy that was a champion for a long time. He's been one of the main stars of one championship for a while. Will he be able to recover from losing the title? That's another storyline that I'm interested to see too, because I've known Martin for I don't even know how many years now. Before he was the champion, before he was double champ. So watching his progression and this fight coming up, him and Jaewoong Kim, is going to be crazy. Yeah. That's next week, I think.
Yeah, it's next week. I that's what I want to ask you too, like about just a few, thoughts on the next card. I think I think Christian Lee's in the main event, right? What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be a Christian Lee performance again? Run forward, slam the guy, and take the victory?
Yeah, Christian Lee has been nothing but spectacular in his fight, right? Every fight, everybody's like, oh, this is the one Christian Lee loses, or this is the one that Christian Lee, can't use his wrestling or his ground and pound.
Mm.
He's proven every single time that it's hard to pick against Christian Lee now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard. Like if you're picking against Christian Lee, I don't know where you see it, right? And Oak, he's a guy that also has skyrocketed himself. You know what I mean? First 2 fights, he beats a former champ and he beats Eddie Alvarez, who's a champion for every organization besides one championship. So I think with those 2 wins, he has deserved the title shot because a lot of the other guys have already fought or lost to Christian. And in my heart, I'm picking Oak to win, get the big upset because he's a fellow Korean. But then at the same time, Christian Lee, it looks unstoppable. So it's like I would never bet on this, but if Oak wins, I'll be happy. But if Christian wins, it's just like I'm not surprised, right?
Yeah.
And but the thing about Oak is like he's surprising everybody.
That is true.
Like nobody knew who he was.
Yeah.
And then in 2 fights, everybody in the organization knows who he is, and he's fighting for the title versus Christian. Yeah. So, I'm wondering if Oak has the formula. Sometimes just matchups, even though we think like this guy's unstoppable, some guy comes in there and beats them.
Right.
And this could be one of those stylistic matchups where Oak could go in there and win a fight, and finish him maybe when Christian doesn't look like he could be finished. But Christian, man, it's hard to pick against him. It's like I think Christian is the most deadliest fighter in any organization that nobody knows, really. And he's the champion.
That's well said. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Which is crazy to me. But sometimes you just don't have the star power, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a Lee, so he should have all the star power.
Well, he's not like his sister. His sister, she has that star power. She has
the aura, right? She's like, I'm here. And he's so nice all the time. He's like you want to be best friends with him. He's just so nice and happy. And you're like, you're a cool guy, but not like the superstar. That is true. I picked against him like all the time until the last time. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. Okay, Christian, you're the man.
I think that's everybody. Everybody picked against him.
But maybe it's also at some point, I don't know, like what happened to his sister, right? To Angela, maybe at some point you win that much, that easily that then one opponent comes in like, yeah, I got this, and then maybe you don't, right? So but speaking of her, like she's gonna come back. I mean, for them to face the winner of the tournament, right? What do you think about that?
I think that's fine. I mean, she was pregnant and there was a pandemic going on. And I don't know. A lot of the fans are mad at her for some reason. It's like, it's her fault that she got pregnant.
How dare you, Angela Lee?
Yeah, it's like, that's not her fault. You know what I mean? Like she wanted to have a baby. She took some time. Yeah. And then the pandemic happened at the same time. So it delayed everything. So, her keeping the belt, that's the organization's decision. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they had long talks with Angela about like, okay, do you want to give up the belt? And maybe Angela in the back, and behind closed doors, she said that, hey, I don't want the belt. I want to give it up. And then one championship said, no, you keep it. We need somebody as the face of that division.
Power.
Yeah, and we need to keep you there. And maybe Angela said like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to relinquish the belt. Maybe Denise will fight for it or whatever. But one championship said, no, you shouldn't. I don't know. I'm just speculating, right?
Well, sure, yeah. Same.
Yeah, so that could be a possibility because at the end of the day, Angela Lee is probably one of their top 3 stars, right? Like for sure, the biggest names, right, that they have, especially being like with her personality and her being the youngest champion. And it also helps her being a woman too. I think this is not like me being sexist or anything like that. I feel like it helps her as who she is and in the organization to be that. But yeah, her fighting the winner, I don't think it's going to happen. I feel like she's going to fight somebody else. Okay. I think she might fight the winner, but I think like someone like with Grand Prix, there's always like delays and unforeseen circumstances. And I feel like Angela will fight before she fights whoever wins the Grand Prix. I don't know. Just my gut feeling on that because nothing works out the way you feel like it does. So, but I think it's okay. A lot of people feel like they shouldn't. A lot of people feel like, oh, the Grand Prix winner should be the champion, and I'm like, come on, we have the champion. Let's get over that. Like that was like a year ago. Let's get over that. Move along, and like this is what's happening now, right? Because did you watch the media thing that they did, the Angela Lee?
A little, yeah.
Yeah, and then that like the Filipino media was like trying to go.
They're crazy. Like
Yeah.
I have lots of Filipino friends here in Thailand, and you're awesome. But they're so passionate.
Mm.
Like they're going all in. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Doesn't Denise? She lives in Bangkok. I think she
I
trains over there, right?
I thought she trained here. Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of those gyms over there in Bangkok, right? But yeah, like yeah, Filipino market, man, it helps.
Yeah.
I think that's the
Definitely.
biggest market in for one championship. They're just a fighting country, but yeah, they're very passionate. Um, I don't know. What I would say to the Filipino fans is that don't worry, Denise will be champion eventually. So it's not going to be as fast as you expect, but she will, man. I think she's only like 23 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's crazy. I'm so mad at that when like those young kids are so good. It's so annoying.
Yeah,
It's awesome. Yeah. But also, since you just mentioned it, and then I promise we move on quickly. But Denise also doesn't have like this typical Filipino style, like that many Filipino fighters have, like the Team Lakay style and stuff. Like no spinning back kicks, like wrestling heavy, obviously. Which I'm surprised that that the Filipinos also like I know appreciate it, but maybe it's just like the country over everything. It's not the style that matters. It's like just the nationality, obviously, that matters.
Yeah, you're right. It isn't. It is the nationality because her style is completely different from anyone from the Philippines. Everybody's like either a boxer or a wushu striker,
Wushu,
something like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah, she's like ground and pound. A lot of clinch work, and yeah, you like to see it. You like to see Denise have that style. Wait until she gets her striking really good, and she's gonna be a beast.
And if she trains here in Thailand, her striking is going to improve, hopefully, pretty soon, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. So since I kept you here for a long time already, let's do a few quick hits if you're okay with that. Just a few.
Oh, fine.
Questions on like also not only one, but obviously we're in Asia, so we talk lots about one. But there's also by the way, if I would have, and I know it's a stupid question, but since I want to keep the time a little bit shorter and don't want to keep you forever, if you would tell someone who doesn't know one yet, you say, hey, watch this or that fight. What are those fights that you tell them to watch?
Man, there's so many crazy fights. I think recently that Being to Win, awesome fight that happened. Man, that was a crazy fight. I'd recommend that fight. Another fight I recommend would be Lee Kai Wen versus Emilio Urrutia. That fight is crazy. Like they went to war for 2 rounds, and then I think Emilio got knocked out in the 3rd round. But that fight is nuts. What other fights are there that are pretty crazy? Man, even the Tan Lee Martin Nguyen fight, even though it was only 2 rounds or 3 rounds, that one was pretty crazy. Brandon Vera versus Ong La. That fight is nuts. That's not even a very long fight either. There's like One Championship has created some crazy fights. There's just so many of them. It's hard to remember which is which. I think those are the ones. Those are the ones I think that come to the top of my mind.
I also have to, like, the first event I saw live was here in Bangkok, one event, and it was Angela Lee fighting, I think, defending her belt for the first time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And seeing her live, she was so fast. It was insane. Like, I did not expect it. So there was just one more time props to Angela Lee for that. Like, that was really, really cool. So if you can watch any fight with her, it's going to be fun too, especially the last ones when she also decided that she also can stand and bang. Or tries to stand and bang. So that should be fun when she comes back. Okay, let me ask you a few more like global questions as well. So we're not only talking about one, but also about the other promotions. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about my German promotion. I'm kidding, not German promotion. But let's talk about the UFC for a moment, because they're also coming up with a few fights. And yeah, so do you follow the UFC as religiously as one?
I probably followed the UFC more because there's more shows, and as someone that interviews fighters, most of the fighters will be from the UFC.
You're right.
As I do this job, as I cover the sport, but I probably know the UFC more closely. than one championship. But yeah, I try to follow one championship, the UFC, Bellator, and recently PFL a little bit more closely. But yeah,
Same. Yeah.
those three promotions I think I follow the most, more in depth than anything. But yeah, the top two for me has to be or the top three has to be one Bellator and the UFC. And plus I'm part of the rankings panel in the Bellator, so I have to follow it.
Okay, cool. Okay, before I have a Bellator question and for you and a UFC question, like, did you hear what Ariel posted yesterday or the day before about like this new promotion that's going to form?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw something about that where they're gonna have like a union and they're gonna treat the promotion like it's what is it? It's like the NFL or the one of those major leagues, and it's a great thought. It's a great thought. It's a great concept, great idea, but why didn't any other promotion do it yet? Why didn't the PFL do it? Why all these promotions that are coming in that are newer? Why haven't they done it yet?
Yeah.
I think it's just, does this new organization have like a bottomless coffer of like gold and diamonds and trinkets and stuff? Is that what's going on? Because it's going to cost a tremendous amount of money to do anything like that. But the concept is great, yes. And and like that will get a lot of clicks and people will be intrigued by it. But I'm like more of like, I'm not believing anything that is being said until like it actually starts, because no promotion has done well with any of those things. And I don't know what makes a difference. Whoever, I guess it's going to be announced pretty soon, but I'm like, I want to be optimistic, but history shows you that those things don't usually work out.
Because eventually they need to make money somehow, right? So
exactly. It's a money business. It's a business. Business is about making money. It's not charity. Then if it's a charity, then it's it's a charity organization. Okay, let's see if you could charity like retirement plans and stuff. Like that's like major cash right there to be putting in for a league that's not even established. It's like it's very iffy.
Charity fighting championships. You heard it here first.
yeah, that's gonna work out.
Okay, let me ask you a few quick questions then. When it comes to the UFC, like, they have fights every week, right? So I'm not going to ask you, hey, next week, but which are the fights you look forward to the most right now? Because there are so many, but there must be a few that you're really excited about.
I think Covington, Usman, the rematch is going to be very exciting. What is it? Another title fight would be Ortega versus Volkanovski.
Yeah, how do you see that going?
Dan Hardy, he made a very good assessment of Brian Ortega, that he's very slick, like he's very smooth in there, and he could kind of pick you apart or find a little gap in your game, and he can expose that gap, right, and smash through the gap. And that's what Brian Ortega has. He has that little bit of an X factor in that way. And that's the way he's going to win the fight. And what Volkanovski is good at is just implementing and adjusting and not being in too much danger. And I think that game plan against an Ortega will win. Right? The being cautious, having a game plan, making adjustments in between rounds, and being a different fighter every round will make this fight interesting. And the thing is, I think Volkanovski is going to win, but I feel like Brian Ortega is going to have 25 minutes to find that
gap,
little mistake, that little gap. And if he can find it, I think he can win the fight that way, like a finish, right? But I also think Volkanovski can finish this fight too. I feel like Ortega's gonna bring us different style, and it's gonna allow Volkanovski to like let loose with power compared to Max Holloway. Because once you let loose with power with Max, then he takes advantage of that, and that's why we didn't see that Volkanovski, but I feel like we'll see that one this time around. But man, Ortega, man, I'm a fan. Like, I like watching him fight, and if he becomes the champ, I think it's going to be with something crazy. Like, it's going to be something wild, like some wild scramble, and he gets a submission or even a knockout. And I think the UFC wants Ortega as champ. I don't think they want Volkanovski as champion.
How can you like Ortega after what he did to the Korean Zombie?
It's just fighting, man. It's just fighting.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's just fighting. The Korean Zombie, like that fight, everybody expected Korean Zombie to win.
Yeah.
And he got dominated. But it just shows you, like we talked about earlier, like we expect this guy to win.
Yeah.
But then it comes in and then just disrupts the whole thing. The other fighter does. So, So I think Volkanovski is going to win. That's my pick. But man, that's going to be just a hell of a fight between those two. And another fight that I'm looking forward to. It's not a title fight, but it's going to be between Rafael Fiziev versus Brad Riddell. Right? I think that fight is going to be pretty insane. Both those guys used to train together, and so they know each other somewhat, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes out in that fight.
Man, Fiziev is crazy.
Yeah, so good.
It's so fun to watch. Yeah,
he is, and too bad Thailand is kind of like isolated. Not isolated, but the world has created these like barriers to get into countries and stuff like that. So. If it wasn't, I'm pretty sure he would be in Phuket training for this fight.
Sure, he trains in Phuket. Yeah. No, his style is like the last fight was insane. That was, lots of fun to watch this guy. That's also a weird question for someone who covers it. But do you have some kind of like favorite fighter? You're like, I always watch this dude or this girl because it's just always fun. Or just some
right now you're talking about right now?
Yeah. Or like if you have like all time, you can be like Fedor is my all time fighter or something.
For like right now, like exciting fighters, there's too many to name. Like it's not like one fighter that, but like all time, I think my all time favorite fighters, I'll give you two of them. My all time favorite fighters would be Dan Henderson.
Don't let this be that.
And Anderson Silva. I think those are like my two favorite fighters to watch. Like no matter what, I can watch their fights.
Yeah, cool. Now I have to ask this. So, like, what did you think about Anderson Silva's boxing?
That's good. Like, he's 2-0. Well, he beat up Tito, which doesn't really mean much, but he knocked him out, right? And when's the last time we saw Tito get knocked out? He doesn't really he's got a huge head, right?
No.
The first fight was legit, right? He beat a former like world champion boxer. So I like Anderson. I'm rooting for Anderson to go to boxing and have like crazy success, like George Foreman, when he was like 50, just beating guys. Like I would love to see Anderson do that. I would love to see Anderson just go and win some kind of obscure boxing title, which would be fun to see. You know what I mean? Everybody would be rooting for him. He has the whole MMA community behind him, basically. So I think he should just pursue that career. And now his sons are old enough to fight too, so which is crazy.
Yeah. His son is fighting, right? I mean,
there's two sons he has.
Yeah,
I think both of them are fighting.
Yeah. So, and then you're saying Anderson Silva for the Thriller World Championship, Thriller Boxing World Championship against Jake Paul. I just say Jake Paul for the algorithm now. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I hope that they make those fights. I hope they fight Anderson Silva.
Yeah, it would be.
If Jake Paul beats Anderson Silva, then you like I already like Jake Paul is someone that you watch no matter what. But if he fights Anderson Silva and beats him, then that proves Jake Paul actually. Well, I think he has some skills in boxing, but that victory would just like put him over the top, especially against him.
I don't want to admit it, but I agree because I was also like, hey man, this stupid Disney star like YouTuber, I don't like him, but he's putting in the work. Apparently, he's looking not too bad, and the things that he says about the UFC fighter pay and so on. I mean, he says it to stir up like shit with Dana, obviously, but it has some merit what he says. So it's like I need to agree with Jake Paul sometimes. Like, what? Why?
Yeah, he does have merit in a lot of things he says, but
Yeah.
he's just telling the truth. He's just saying the truth. So
Yeah,
when you say
sure.
the truth, it's easy, right? And especially if it's against your enemy, which I
Exactly.
guess Dana's his enemy now.
No.
But yeah, Jake Paul, I don't know how long he's going to be around for, but he has impacted the sport though tremendously.
He's not around for a long time, but for a good time. No, there was the other guy. Speaking of the other guy, last UFC question. What do you think about the Chandler Gaethje fight?
Oh yeah, that's another one, right? I forgot about that. That's another fight that's going to be tremendous. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like
Yeah.
Michael Chandler has had 2 fights in the UFC. The first fight he got a knockout. The second fight he got knocked out.
Yeah.
And now he's facing one of the most violent fighters in that division, Justin Gaethje. I'd have to go with Justin Gaethje in that one.
No.
I don't know. I think if they get in a firefight, I feel like Justin Gaethje will be able to take the more shots, and I feel like that's what it's going to come down to. Who can take the most shots without falling? And I think Justin Gaethje is probably the fighter to do that.
I wonder if yeah, I mean, I that's obviously true and I agree with it, but I wonder if the game plan for Justin Gaethje, because I mean, he's got an awesome coach, if they're going to game plan like just differently this time, like trying to surprise Chandler, not just moving forward, but I know throwing different looks at him. Maybe for the first time in his UFC career, he's going to wrestle.
Nah, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Of course not.
I doubt it.
Been waiting for this like every fight. This time he's going to wrestle, and he never does it.
Yeah. I doubt they wrestle.
No. Okay, so last 2 questions. Since you said you're on the Bellator rankings panel, I'm gonna have to ask you, like, let's say two Bellator questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yoel Romero. I mean, it's not a question. No, it's kind of like Yoel Romero. Like, what do you think about his debut? What do you think?
I think
How's it gonna go?
I think that it's a tough fight to debut, right? Against Phil Davis, right? So Phil Davis. His style never changes. Like, you know what to expect from Phil Davis. He never really gets like too badly damaged either.
Yeah.
And I think like just Phil Davis, he's always active in his fights. And if Yoel comes like Yoel usually does, he sits back and explodes and sits back and explodes. I think Phil Davis will be able to like win the fights between those moments. So be able to like pick him apart, maybe wrestle a little bit, grapple. I don't know. I think MMA wrestling, Phil Davis is probably better at it just because he's just had more time with it. But yeah, I don't think his debut goes down. Like, it's not going to be like some violent affair where it's like, oh, Yoel's done. He's finished. No, it's going to be one of those like, oh, Yoel has some work to do. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are not going to play around with him in Bellator either.
Right. But we've been waiting for Yoel to show something for a while now, right? I mean, the crazy violent Yoel was like years ago. The last 2-3 years, he was like the patient one, just waiting until it's over. And it's not only the style bender fight, but before too, right? He wasn't always that forward pressure heavy. So unfortunately, I agree. Like, Phil Davis probably got this one, I would assume. And the last thing that I ask you about the Bellator is, of course, Lima MVP 2. How do you see this going?
I see it going the same way.
Yeah.
I see that Lima being able to knock him out again, but just better this way. I think Lima in his last fight, he's coming off a loss too. So when you got Lima coming off a loss, very, very dangerous fighter right there. Yeah, Venom Page, I like him, but I think I'd rather see him in combat karate or karate combat or whatever it's called. For some reason. I think that one I think he could be like the biggest star over there.
That's actually a good MMA. Point. Yeah.
And you know what fight I would love to see is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus MVP over in karate combat. I think
Bas Rutten right now goes like, yes, we're gonna make this happen.
Exactly. Bas Rutten would be drooling over that type of matchup for the promotion.
Just imagine a Bas Rutten GSP, like a special whatever, and then those two. That's an awesome idea.
For sure. Like, so MVP, I don't know, man. Maybe Lima goes in there and wrestles. Who knows? But I doubt it. I think they're gonna try to knock each other out. And I got Lima in that fight.
No. Yeah, I heard MVP talking, like I think on a Bisping podcast, that he still plans on going to the UFC at some point. but I'm not. I like you said, like karate combat, like point karate or something. I
Mm,
don't know, would be better for him rather than like I don't know. He's got this flashy styles, which is kind of cool, but then against Lima, it did not pay off at all, of course. So it works against like the maybe lower ranked opponents, but not against like the elite. So I'm not sure how he would do in the UFC, but wait and see. But I agree with you. Like I think Lima with a chip on his shoulder is gonna take care of business.
oh,
Okay,
for
I think
sure.
that's almost all the questions I want to ask you. But now to finish things off at the end, and thanks for the long talk. It's really fun. Just at the end, like of course we plug your stuff, but not that you would need it from like a small podcast like this. But when do you have also some recommendations on like, hey, if you want to get more into like MMA, what where should you look for information? Of course, SCMP and all the things that you do, Sports Skeeter as well, right?
Yeah.
And so on. But do you have any other sources besides your own that you say, hey, I listen to this and that, and that's really cool?
Usually for like fighting, like I don't really. You know who has a good breakdown shows would be like if you're interested in like the breakdown of fights would be like Dan Hardy, his
Oh, they're
channel.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah, Full Reptile. I think like his show is probably one of the best out there if you're looking for like a preview for a big fight.
true.
He really explains like what these fighters can bring to the
No,
matchup really well, and him being British helps too. You know, like the accent. I don't know why.
more
That's a good
sophisticated.
show. Yeah, yeah. That's a great show on YouTube, and it's free, so you don't have to pay for it. Another
How did he
person,
end up with one though? Sorry, but how did he end up also doing one now? That's awesome.
yeah, you know, like
Right?
you do good work. I think people are going to
Yeah.
reach out to you and see if you
No.
could do some stuff. But yeah, he does do a lot of one. I actually recently interviewed Dan Hardy and talked to him about
Oh
that,
yeah.
and yeah, and he explained like how that all come together for SCMP. Um, but outside of that, like I'll listen to like Aaron Bronsetter's show on
Yeah.
TSN. Like he usually interviews some of the big fighters coming up on the UFCs
Mhm.
every weekend. His show is good. He's great at interviewing fighters. Very well researched, you know, questions. Um, Another one would be, what else do I listen to? Mostly that. Like, you know, outside of that, I try to kind of watch other things that are not fighting related.
Fair.
So right now I'm like watching the NFL because I like the NFL,
Okay.
and the season just started last week.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like diving into that a little bit more in detail and doing fantasy football and all that.
Yeah. What's your team?
The Seahawks, Seattle
Oh,
Seahawks.
okay.
Um, but yeah, so for fighting, those are the only ones that I like regularly tune into. You know, other
Mhm.
ones I'll catch randomly, like clips here, clips there. I've never watched any MMA Hour, like the whole thing. Like I've never watched
Yeah,
it.
me
I've
neither.
only seen clips.
No.
You know, like you don't have to watch those things to be a fan. To be in
Yeah.
my eyes, right? You could just watch the shows and watch
Mm.
the preview shows
Yeah.
and yeah. So yeah, check out those. But Luke Thomas, his show is pretty good. The one that he does by himself, like his live
Yeah.
chat. I think that's something you could watch as a fan and appreciate his viewpoints.
Yeah.
And I tune into that once in a while. Yeah, so mostly those big name, you know, big name people.
Mm.
I usually like tune into that.
So like more on the breakdown side of things, like also like Dan Hardy and Luke Thomas.
Yeah.
So you don't like Luke Thomas and the other guy when they're just like, I don't know, roasting each other and like spitballing for like an hour. You're not a fan of this?
No, I never like I've seen it, like seen their show like maybe once or twice, but
Okay,
it's just not like it's not
that's
what I rather just spitball with people that I know, you know. I don't want to
sure, that
watch
makes
other
sense.
people
Yeah.
do it. So
Right. Speaking of people you know and everything, where can people find you?
oh, you could just find me at JHK MMA on everything, like on Instagram, on Twitter, even on Facebook, I believe. Yeah, so JHK MMA, and then you could search Kumite TV on YouTube
Yep.
for my YouTube channel. And I will have some news at the end of the month.
Okay.
Like I'm kind of like shifting things around right now. So, but if you stay tuned, this at the end of the month, I'll be announcing something about my
Okay,
career,
cool.
furthering my career.
Teaser right here. I like it. Okay, let's finish this thing with like one last thing. Your most crazy MMA prediction for this year. What's something crazy that you think could happen or you want to see happen?
I don't want to see it happen, but this is I don't know if this is a crazy prediction, but I think another person breaks their leg.
Ah, shit.
I think
Chris Weidman again? No.
No, I think that's gonna happen again. I think I think the sport's getting at like such a high level now to where we're gonna start seeing more injuries in the sport.
Via oblique kicks. I see your tweet about it.
Yeah, oblique kicks. You know, like should they take these things out? No, I don't think you should take them out because you can defend them. You know, it's your responsibility, right? It's like, okay, you can get kicked in the head, but you can't get kneed. You can't kick to the leg. That doesn't make any sense, or stomped or whatever. But yeah, I feel like there's going to be more injuries. I think that's just going to happen. It's inevitable. And on like picking fights wise, I say that this year you're talking about, oh man, it's hard to say. It seems like everything that's controversial has been pushed back.
That's true.
Let me say this. I'll say, man, there's nothing really that I could say that's a bold prediction, to be honest with you, because it's like, okay, I'll say like, okay, Lauren Murphy defeats Valentina Shevchenko. I think that's a bold prediction, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's gonna happen. But then you got Zhang Weili rematching Rose Namajunas. So I think Zhang Weili gets the belt back.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
By a 5-round war.
Yeah, I think it's going to be
3 rounds, right?
It's going to be a technical. It's going to be a technical battle. I think it's going to be a technical battle. I think we're going to get the, Rose Namajunas went in there perfect kick, head kick, knockout, perfect, right? But I think in the second fight, we're going to get the fight that the fans and like the UFC and everybody expected out of these two, a back and forth war, and I think that's what we're going to see. And I think Zhang Weili is going to squeak it out somehow, some way. That's my bold prediction.
And then Joanna comes through the crowd and yells, "That's my belt!"
Yeah, she's coming off 2 losses or something.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think Joanna's gonna fight again. It's gonna be hard to imagine her fighting again, and she's always only thinking about the title. So it's hard to fight for the title when both the people that are fighting for the title you lost to them.
Beat you already. Yeah, that's true.
It's a hard argument right there.
Maybe she switches divisions, like weight class, but I don't know how easy it would be for her.
She did that already, but then she lost, right?
Oh, yeah, right. She did it once. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Okay. But, okay. That fight, I forgot about it, but it's going to be an awesome fight. Okay, cool. Well, 1 hour 20. Thank you so much for all those things. I'm going to edit this thing, send it to you.